Okay, so today we're diving into, well, a story that's been all over the news lately.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's about those allegations against Neil Gaiman, the guy behind Sandman.
Right. Sandman Coraline.
Exactly, and a ton of other stuff. But this isn't just about his work. Well, it's getting pretty serious. There's this new article in New York Magazine that really digs into things.
Hmm. I haven't seen that one yet.
Oh, it goes pretty deep. And it builds on some reporting that Tortoise Media did a while back. So what we're going to do today is kind of break it all down for you, figure out, what exactly are these accusations?
Yeah.
And then, like, how does this all fit in with, well, the whole conversation about power, especially in Hollywood, who has it, who gets to use it, and what happens when it's abused.
Right, right. I mean, we've definitely seen more attention on that in recent years, like how power dynamics play out in places like the entertainment industry.
Yeah, for sure. So to get us started, we're mainly looking at that New York Magazine piece and those Tortoise Media podcasts. And just to give you the short version, the magazine talked to 8 women. 8 women. And they're accusing Gaiman of a whole range of things. Like, some say it was non-consensual stuff, under the guise of BDSM. Others talk about inappropriate behavior, but with people connected to his family.
Oh, wow. That's pretty heavy. And I guess with the BDSM aspect, like that's where consent becomes super important, right?
Yeah,
We
exactly.
have to be really, really clear about what everyone is and isn't okay with.
Absolutely. And it seems like that's a big part of what the New York Magazine article is getting at. Like, even though they don't go into like super graphic detail, they really focus on this idea that consent was violated.
Hmm.
And they really get into specifics with 2 of the women. One is Scarlett Pavlovich, and she was babysitting Gaiman's kid. She says that, basically, that she was pressured into things that made her uncomfortable, and that it wasn't consensual BDSM, it was assault. Gaiman's people, they're saying everything was totally consensual. But then there's this other woman, they call her Caroline, and she was also a caretaker.
Okay.
She claims that Gaiman crossed boundaries, sometimes even with his kid around.
Oh, wow.
And get this, she reportedly got a $300,000 settlement.
What?
Yeah, after she signed an NDA.
A non-disclosure agreement.
Yeah.
So, like, she can't talk about it.
Right. What do you think that tells us, about what might have happened?
Well, I mean, a settlement that big and then silencing her with an NDA, it definitely makes you wonder.
Exactly. And don't forget, these are just 2 of the women, right? Like I said, there are 8 in total. The article mentions rape, coercion. It seems like it was happening in a lot of different situations.
So there's this pattern, maybe?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what's so disturbing about it. And it's important to say that Gaiman, well, at least his reps, they're denying everything. They say anything that happened was consensual. But, there's no denying that this is having a real impact on his career. And, like, all of this is still happening while the legal stuff is playing out.
I see.
We've already seen Prime Video, like, cut short the new season of Good Omens. And Disney, they've hit pause on their adaptation of the Graveyard Book.
So, like, some projects are getting shelved.
Yeah. But then you have Netflix, and they're still moving ahead with season 2 of Sandman. And Prime's sticking with Anansi Boys. It just seems like everyone is, well, reacting differently.
It makes you wonder, right? Like, is it even possible to separate the art from the artist?
That's such a good question. And that's why I think this is so much bigger than just, gossip about a famous guy. It really gets us thinking about how we deal with these accusations, especially now when information spreads so fast.
For sure. And I think we also have to, like, take a step back and look at all the power dynamics involved. How do we believe survivors? And what about the accused? Like, how do we make sure everyone is treated fairly when something like this comes up?
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack. It's wild, right? Like, we're talking about these really serious accusations, but then there's this whole other conversation happening online.
Oh, yeah. Social media is a whole other beast.
Totally. Like, on the one hand, it can be amazing for giving people a platform, especially, when they're speaking out against someone powerful.
Right.
But it also feels like, I don't know, sometimes it's just a bunch of noise and, like, people jumping to conclusions before we even know all the facts.
It's true. It's easy to get caught up in all the opinions and hot takes. It's hard to know what to believe sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. It's like everyone's already decided who's guilty and who's innocent before anything's been proven.
That's why it's so important to remember that due process matters. We can't just condemn someone based on accusations alone. The legal system has to do its thing.
Absolutely. And speaking of legal stuff, that New York Magazine article, They mentioned that some of the women are thinking about filing lawsuits, civil lawsuits, I mean.
Interesting.
Yeah, and that brings up another layer of complexity, doesn't it? Because while civil cases, they have different rules than criminal cases.
Right. The standard of proof is lower in a civil case.
Yeah.
So even if Gaiman doesn't end up facing criminal charges, he could still be held accountable in civil court.
Exactly. And I wonder, you know, thinking big picture, could this kind of set a precedent for the whole entertainment industry?
Possibly. It's definitely uncharted territory in a lot of ways. We're seeing more and more people come forward with allegations like these. And the industry, they're still trying to figure out how to respond.
It's a tough spot for them to be in. Do they protect their investments? Or do they, take a stand against misconduct, even if it means, I don't know, losing money, putting projects on hold?
It's a complex equation for sure.
It is. But one thing I keep coming back to is, well, the courage it takes for these women to speak out. I mean, knowing that they're going to be under a microscope, that people are going to judge them.
For sure.
That
Especially when you're going up against someone like Neil Gaiman, someone who's so well known and respected.
Exactly. That takes a lot of strength. And I can't help but think, maybe this will encourage others to come forward. Like maybe this will create a shift where, people feel safer sharing their stories.
I hope so. It's always a long road to changing a culture.
Mm,
But these individual stories, they can definitely be a catalyst for change.
they can. So, as we're trying to sort through all of this, what do you think is the most important thing for us, like as the audience, to keep in mind?
Well, I think it's crucial to be thoughtful, to engage with all of this, but critically. We can't just be passive consumers of entertainment anymore. We need to be aware of the context, the power dynamics at play.
Yeah, it's not just about the art anymore. It's about who made it and what was happening behind the scenes.
Absolutely. And we need to be conscious of how our choices, as consumers, what impact they have.
So, like, are we supporting ethical behavior? Or are we, I don't know, turning a blind eye to something because we like the movie or the book?
Right. It's something we all need to consider. And it leads to another tough question. Can we separate the art from the artist? Can we still enjoy Gaiman's work, knowing what we know now?
That is a tough question.
It is. And it's one that everyone's going to have to answer for themselves. Some people might say it's impossible, that you can't support the work without condoning the actions.
But then others might say that's unfair to everyone else involved. All the other people who worked on those books, those shows.
It's a lot to think about. There's no easy answer.
There isn't. But I think it's important that we are thinking about it, that we're having these conversations.
Absolutely. These are complex issues, and we need to keep talking about them, keep pushing for accountability.
So where does this leave Neil Gaiman's legacy? What happens to his career? And how does the entertainment industry move forward from all of this?
These are questions we don't have answers to yet. But one thing is clear. This is a story that's going to keep unfolding. And it has the potential to change things in a big way.
Yeah. So let's keep exploring this in the last part of our deep dive. It's funny, like even with everything we've talked about, I still find myself thinking about Gaiman's work. Like, will people still see it the same way?
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? How does all of this affect his legacy? I mean, history's full of examples where, like, you had these amazing artists, but then these accusations come out and it changes everything.
It's true. And like sometimes the work survives, people still enjoy it. But other times it's too hard to separate the art from what the artist did.
Yeah. And it feels like with the internet, it's even harder now. Like, even if legally nothing really comes of this, those accusations, they're going to be out there forever, attached to his name.
It's like a permanent record, almost.
Exactly. And it's a reminder for anyone who has power, right? Like, what you do, it matters.
Yeah.
And your reputation, that's a fragile thing, especially when you're in the public eye. We're in a time where people are demanding accountability. And that applies to everyone.
No one gets a free pass.
Right. And it's made me think a lot about us, the fans. Like, what's our responsibility here? If we believe in holding people accountable, does that mean we have to, like, boycott Gaiman's work? That's such a hard question.
It is. And there's some people who would say, absolutely, you have to. Like, you can't separate the art from the artist. So if you don't like what the artist did, you can't support their work.
Right.
But then others would argue that punishing the work, it also punishes all those other people who are involved.
Yeah.
The editors, the artists, the publishers, like they didn't do anything wrong.
It's true. And they might say, like, the art itself still has value, even if you don't like the person who created it.
Yeah.
It's really tricky. I don't think there's one right answer. It's about what feels right to you, your own values, your own choices.
So what now? I mean, this whole thing, it's not over, right? There are still a lot of unanswered
Yeah,
questions.
and this is much bigger than just one author, you know? It feels like a real turning point for the whole entertainment industry. Like, what choices will people make? Will anything really change?
Right. So for all of you listening, what can you do? What should you do? It can feel overwhelming.
Well, I think the most important thing is to stay informed.
Yeah.
Keep learning about what's happening. Follow the legal stuff, read different perspectives, and talk to people. Have those tough conversations.
And remember, your voice matters.
Absolutely. Support organizations that help survivors speak out against injustice and, yeah, hold people accountable. You can do that with your words, with your choices, what you choose to buy or not buy. You can even get involved in activism. Like, all of that makes a difference.
I might not feel like it, but it does add up.
Exactly. Real change doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
But when we have these conversations, when we raise awareness and when we take action, we can, we can start to build a better world, a world where everyone feels safe and respected, a world where people can speak up and be heard.
Well said. This deep dive, it's been a lot, but I'm glad we did it. I hope all of you listening, you've learned something
Hmm.
and that this has made you think, really think about these issues.
Me too.
So until next time, everybody, keep being curious, stay informed, and stay engaged.